Thank you for joining us for today's message. We are always so encouraged to hear how God is using Adventure Church to speak into your life. If you would like to support Adventure Church financially, you can do so online and help us bring messages just like this one to you each and every week. Now let's prepare our hearts to hear a word from God.
All right. Well, again, good morning, everyone. We are in week 2 of a series we're calling Breathing Room. How do we create margin, margin in the areas that matter most in our life? I want to welcome those of you who are watching online, wherever you're tuned in from today. Thanks for being a part of our experience here at Adventure Church. Well, we all know that we live in a culture that pushes us to our limits, right? And our limits are our limits. No matter what your limit may be, we all have limits. And when we live at our limits, there is no margin. So in this series, we're talking about how life is just better when you have some breathing room, right? When you have some margin in the areas that matter most in our life, when we have time to spare, money in savings, when we're able to be a part of things like life groups and coming to church and having some quality time, to read our Bible, to connect with God, where we create that margin in our life. And so that's the question we've been answering and that we're going to continue to answer throughout the series is how do we create margin where it matters most in the area of our schedules, our finances, and our relationships. And so to define breathing room for the sake of this series, we've been talking about how do we create space between our current pace, what you're running at right now, and the limit that you are designed to run at, that your limit would have. Because all of us, again, have limits, and when you are constantly redlining your life, things can tend to go wrong. We went to the Hartford Fair. Anybody have heard of Hartford Fair? Okay. Yeah, we were there with some of our friends, and they're here. Excuse me. And we went to the Hartford Fair, and I've never been there before, but they have this thing called, like, tough truck or rough truck competition, and so they essentially, like, race these beat-up old beaters, like old Jeep Cherokees and old trucks, and they run them through this mud course. And it was funny to see because these are just amateur people like you and me who are like, hey, let's just grab a truck and, drive it over these mud piles. And these guys were terrible drivers. Many of them wrecked multiple times. And then this one guy got stuck in the mud, and he was doing everything he could to get out. And you could just tell that he was redlining his truck, and eventually he didn't get out, and his engine just blew, like just smoke, just started going everywhere, right? Like that was it. And we can find ourselves in that same situation where we feel like our life is so full that we're just spinning our wheels, and we begin to redline our lives. And eventually, if you live at the limit, you will blow up too. Eventually, there has to be a breaking point. So how do we create the breathing room so we don't reach that breaking point? So margin is the space between our load and our limits. And you will never live the life, I'm just telling you, God intends for you unless you intend to. So that's what we've been talking about, what we recapped last week. Because listen, when we live at our limits, the stress increases, our relationships suffer, our focus narrows, we begin to neglect things in our life. And it's easy to blame a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, we have to be the ones to take ownership and control of our lives to create the margin where it matters most. And God established breathing room in our schedules. He mandated margin, and He commanded all of us, come on, somebody should thank God this morning for this. He commanded all of us to take a day off. Come on, right? When you kick your feet up and you're watching the PGA Championship this afternoon, you can look at your wife and say, God commanded me to take a day off, and today is the day, right? I'm going to take some time off, because that's the reality, is when we really think about it, if God listed rest in the top 10 commandments, right, along with do not murder, do not commit adultery, all these other things, don't worship other idols, right, that He said, and take a day off, that it has to be important for us because He knew that He designed us with rest in mind, that you've been designed with rest in mind, that there's a rhythm to your life that you need to find, and it's 6 on, 1 off. And maybe if you're really lucky, it's 5 on and 2 off, right? That's kind of our culture, where you have a weekend off, but many of us have other responsibilities, but where you find a day to Sabbath and to take rest. So today we're going to be talking about our time and your schedule and your calendars. I was reading an article this week, and it said that we, in our culture today, that we sleep less, work more, and enjoy life less than any other time in human history. That we work more, we sleep less, and we enjoy life less than any other time in human history. And we talked about this a little bit last week, that in our quest to get the most out of life, we end up not enjoying life, right? That we work so hard that we can't even enjoy the fruits of our labor, right? We live in a society where we drive too fast. I mean, not all of you. Hopefully, a couple weeks ago, you got some Adventure Church stickers on your car, and hopefully you put them on the back. We're trying to just help you spread the word about our church, but also to bring some accountability to some of your driving. So hopefully you put that on there. But we sleep less, we work more, right? We drive too fast, we eat on the go, we eat in the car, we're feeding our kids in the back seat, we're constantly distracted, we're pulled in multiple directions. It seems like we're always running behind, always trying to get to the next place, and no matter how busy we get, it's just hard to say no to the opportunities that are around us, and there's no breathing room in our schedules. And I want you to know this, as your time goes, so goes your life. As your time goes, how you spend your time, so goes your life, because when you think about it, life is time. Life is your time, and we all have a limited amount. And Psalm 90 was written by Moses, and if you know Moses from our Hall of Fame series and what he did and the life he had, he lived 120 years, and he begins to talk about life, and he begins to talk about the importance of our time and how we spend it. And he was a very wise man. He lived 120 years, and so I think we should listen to him. Do we all agree? So let's see what he says when it comes to our time, when it comes to our calendars. The first thing, starting in Psalm 90, verses 1 through 2, it says this: Lord, through all generations, you have been our home. Before the mountains were born, you gave birth to the earth and the world. From beginning to end, you are God. This is Moses' way of saying, right, God's in control. You are the beginning from the end. You may have heard it this way: He's the Alpha and the Omega. There's nothing before God. There'll be nothing after Him. That He is the beginning from the end, and that He is the one who controls the days of our lives. He is in control of our time. And I think most of us believe that God has something to do with our lives, regardless of where you may be at in your spiritual journey and maybe where you're at in your relationship with Jesus. Maybe you're still kind of kicking the tires on this thing called faith and being a Christ follower. But regardless of your belief in that area, I think most of us would say that we believe that God has something to do with control of our lives, because if you found out today that you had a terminal disease and your time was limited, if the doctor said you have maybe 3 months to live or 6 months to live, that most of us, the first thing we would do is pray. We'd say, oh God, what am I going to do? Oh God, help me. Or we would call someone and say, listen, I'm not a prayer person, but can you pray for me? I just got some news. So we believe that. It's kind of instinctively in us. And Moses is saying that God is in control of the length of our lives. Goes on in verse 4, he said, for you 1,000 years are a passing day, as brief as a few night hours. Another translation says that 1,000 years is like a day to the Lord. When you think about God, that He's the beginning from the end, that He has no concept of time, that eternity is something we really can't wrap our minds around, and that is the world in which God lives. And He's saying here, like to God, like the years just fly by. Can you may agree that? Like it seems like your life is going quick. Like I just realized that next year I'll be graduated from high school for 20 years, and some of you are like, wow, you're old. Some of you are like, 20 years, that's nothing, right? Where you think about, like, and I think about since my kids were born, like how time seemed to go even faster, that my son will be starting kindergarten this year, and I just go, man, where did the time go? My daughter is going to be in second grade, and some of you have been in those seasons where your kids are graduating, they're going to college, and in life, you're settling down, you're getting closer to retirement, and we look at it and we go, man, the years are just flying by. Can you imagine what that's like for God? That He's been around forever. He's the beginning from the end. Another verse says that he goes from everlasting to everlasting. Like this concept of time for God and how it is for us and how our life looks, that our little blip, you think about it, right? Like our little blip in this world in the eyes of God. That's what Moses is getting at. He goes on in verse 10, he said, 70 years are given to us, some even live to 80. But even the best years are filled with pain and trouble. Soon they disappear, and we will fly away. He's saying the years quickly pass by, and when they do pass by, we eventually get to the point where we will fly away. And if you didn't know this, and you remember the old song, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away, right? No one knows that song? Come on, you don't tune into Gaither Hour on TV. You even bought the collection off the infomercial there of the Gaither singing, right? That song, that's where that comes from. That eventually we're going to fly away from this world. That this world will be something we live behind. And Moses is saying, God, you're in control of it all. You number our days. You know us. You know our time. You have it in your hands. And we get a brief moment in this world. And what we do with it is important. He goes on in verse 12, and so he says that in light of all of these things, in light of who God is, that he is in control of all of this and what he's done for us, and that we do have the promise of eternity with him, and how do we create this margin and breathing room? This is the direction that Moses gives us. In verse 12, it says this, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. Teach us, God. Give us wisdom that we could understand the brevity of this life, how short it really is. In the New International Version, it says this, it says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days so that we may gain wisdom, so that we will know how to live those days out wisely, is what Moses is saying. You see, a lot of us, spend our time as though it's unlimited, even though we know it's not. We know that. Like, I'm not, this is not enlightening any of you. Like, wow, my time is limited. Someday I'm going to die. You knew that someday your time will be over, that your moment in this world will be finished, but we can tend to lose that perspective, and we can tend to live our lives as though our time is unlimited, that we have as much of it as we want. And Moses is saying that we have to learn to live daily as if our days are numbered. And we do this occasionally, right? Like when you have big moments in your life, you put countdowns up. Like when you're about to get married, you put like a countdown tracker on your phone, or, you get the app and, I have X amount of days and X amount of weeks, or in some of you, hours until this big moment. I see a lot of you now who have been married and have kids, like the countdown you put on your social media is your countdown to vacation. Come on, somebody, right? Like, hey, I'm locking in. I got 61 days, 5 hours, and 3 minutes until I'm setting sail on that cruise ship, right? And we count down, the days until important things in our life. Like for me right now, I can tell you that there's 20 days until Buckeye football kicks off. Come on, somebody, right? 20 more days until college football season is upon us, and Ohio State will begin their season. And I just want to remind you that Buckeye Day is coming up September 2nd. We always celebrate the opening weekend here at Adventure Church, and so wear your gear. We'll have a lot of food and fun, and we'll be giving away tickets to a Buckeyes game. Brutus will be in the house with us, so make sure you're here for that day. But we do this. We count down days until big events, and when we do that, what we're doing is we're numbering our days, right? We're saying, okay, this is how many days I have left until this moment. And so we know what it means to do that. And if you maybe knew when your moment was going to be over in this world, when the final day of your life would be, maybe we would have a countdown timer for that. Maybe we would begin to live as if our days were limited. What if we lived that way? What if you knew this is the end for you? This is the day, and it can be different for everyone, right? No one knows when our time on this earth will be done. And I'm not trying to create a picture. I hope all of you live long into your, 80s, 90s, 100 years, whatever that may be for you. But the reality is that our days are numbered. And so we have to learn to number our days because our days are numbered. And when it comes to our schedules and it comes to our time, it makes us ask the question, if I'm really numbering the days of my life, if my days are numbered, because they are, how would I spend my time? How would I live my life? What would I be doing differently with the way I'm living right now? And so I think this makes us all ask the question, if you knew your days were limited, how would you spend your time? If you knew your time was eventually going to run out, how would you spend it? Because the reality is that time is the most valuable thing that we have, right? It's the most valuable thing that you have. Not your money, not your retirement. You know, the Bible talks about, that the wise people don't live that far into the future. You plan for retirement. It says, but how foolish you can be sometimes that you stockpile all of your resources thinking that you're going to live long enough to use them. Because you don't even know if you will. So how are you spending your time? It's the most valuable thing that you have. There's an old country song by Clint Black that says, "This killing time is killing me." And I was thinking about that this week as I was putting this message together and thinking about, you know what? There should be no such thing as killing time. Why would we kill time? Why would we waste time? If it's that valuable to us, why would we ever spend it unwisely? And that's what Moses is saying. He's saying, God, teach us to number our days so that we can have wisdom to know how to spend our time. I think what Moses is telling us is that we have to remember daily our time is limited, and when we do that, it provides us the wisdom to know how to spend our limited time. When you really get that perspective, when you really wake up going, man, this could be my final day. I don't know how much time I have left, but if this is my final day, if these are my final moments with my family, with my spouse, in my career, and if these are the final moments that I have, how would I spend them wisely? I think this reality smacks us in the face when we go to the funeral of someone where their life seemed to be cut short. And unfortunately, I've had to be a part of funerals and oversee services of kids in their 11, 12 years old, 16 years old, young adults with kids, they're 30 years old, and cancer comes. And I've been in these moments, and I'm telling you, when I sit out there, and if I were to talk about the same thing, in that moment, that reality hits everyone. This could be me. I could have been in that car accident. I could have been the one that got diagnosed. Who am I? How this could be my time with my kids that was cut short and not someone else's. And when we're faced with that reality, we begin to live differently, do we not? We begin to look at our spouse differently. We begin to look at our kids differently. We go, man, you are the most important thing to me. Someone else's kid gets diagnosed with a terminal disease, and you go, dear Lord, thank you for the health of my child. Thank you, God, for your. And I'm gonna hug my kid a little tighter tonight, knowing that this could be them. And for some reason, though, that it takes these tragedies to get us to wake up to the fact what Moses is saying, number your days because your days are numbered. Why would you live any differently? Time is the most valuable thing that you have, but we can tend to lose sight of that, and we waste our time. Because you don't get extra time. You can't save it. You can't stockpile it. You can stockpile vacation. I get that, right? You can save all your vacation days, but you can't stockpile more life. You can't add to your days. They are numbered. And only God knows the number of our days. And Moses says, Lord, in light of that you know, teach us to number our days. Your time is limited, so you need to limit how you spend your time. In Job 14:5, he was having this reality. You guys know the story of Job. He loses pretty much everything. His spouse, his children, they all pass away. He loses his livelihood, all of his resources, all of his money. And this is what he says. He says, God, you have decided the length of our lives. You know how many months we will live, and we are not given a minute longer. God, you know. You've already decided. You know how many months we will live. You know how much time we have, and you're not going to add to it. It is what it is. So in light of that, today, what do we do? If we understand that our days are numbered and we need to number our days and we need to live with that perspective, what do we need to do? And I think it's really as simple as this, is that you need to surrender your schedule to God. Surrender your schedule, your time, your life, your planning, how you decide to spend your time, because everyone gets to decide how they spend it. And we talked a little about this last week, and you go, well, Kyle, you don't know my boss. They decide how I spend my time. They tell me to come in early, but who chose that job? Right? You could choose a different job. Well, if I had a different job, I'd make less money. We'd been able to live in the house we live. We'd have to downsize. Well, who gets to decide what kind of house you live in? Who gets to decide what kind of car you drive? Who gets to decide what school you put your kids in, right? We all have the choice, and so we have to say, God, I'm going to surrender my schedule to you. I'm not just going to spend my time how I want. In light of who you are, in light of eternity, in light that my days are numbered, I am going to surrender my schedule and my time to the one who actually knows how much I have left. I'm going to give it to you, God. And so we have to get a godly perspective when it comes to our priorities, how we spend our time. And so how does a godly perspective change our priorities? And you're saying is, in light of what God considers important, Moses said, what is the wise thing to do? In light of what God would consider important, the areas where I spend my time, what I invest my time into, what would be the wise thing to do? Is this a wise choice of how I would spend my time? And it's really as simple as that. God, is this wise? Is it wise for me to stay in this job? And don't email me this week and tell me you quit your job and to pray for you. Like, I will, but use some wisdom, okay? You know, but think about it. In light of what's important, should this job be my priority? Should I be on the road as much as I am at this stage of my kid's life? I was talking to someone last week about their schedule and that they turned down a promotion that would have brought a lot more income to their family because of the demand it would have put on their schedule. That's living wisely. It's not just going, wow, more money, great, we can get all these new things we can add to this. No, in this season of my life, what is most important? And we're going to talk about that in a couple weeks when we talk about relationships and how we have to choose and how we have to say no to some good things so that we can say yes to better things. So we ask ourselves those questions. Is this wise? Is this a wise investment of my time? So as we look at some practical application today, and maybe if you even want to consider this your homework this week as we go back to school on Wednesday, that you can have some homework with your children if you still have them in school. But maybe you ask yourself these 4 things. First is this: what do I need to start doing? In light of who God is, in light of eternity, and in light that my days are numbered, and so I need to number my days, and I need to surrender my time to God and say, God, what would you consider a wise investment of my time? In light of that, what do I need to start doing? What am I not doing that I should be doing? Why would I not be doing this? For some of you, it's just creating enough time in the morning to connect with God. One of the first things to go when you have no margin in your schedule is your time with the Lord. And you go, well, what? I mean, I come to church, Kyle. That's like, I'm here, right? And you're here today, but I'm telling you, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this when it comes to our relationships, but Jesus should be the center of all that we do. He's the center, and the spokes of the wheel of our life, or our marriage, our kids, our career, and it should all be attached to Him. And He says that His Spirit is what gives you the strength to get through these days and to navigate and to have the wisdom where you connect with Him. And for some of you, you just need to start doing that. I'm going to download a Bible app. I'm going to get on a reading plan, and I'm going to commit to connecting with God and getting wisdom and strength from Him. I'm going to start, that date night up again because I used to do it and now I don't do it. I'm going to start investing into my marriage again. I'm going to make sure that I'm spending quality time with my kids. I'm going to start doing that. For some of you, you have to ask yourself, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to stop spending my time on? Is this wise in light of who God is and that my time is limited and it's the most valuable thing that I have? Should I keep spending it here? Is this a wise choice of how I spend my time? And I touched on it briefly just a second ago, but for some of you, it could even be as big as your career. In light of this season of my life, and it's not saying that it's no forever, it's just no for now. This isn't wise for me. This pulls me away from my kids' youth. And why would I do that? For money or for promotion or to live a certain way. Why would I give this up for that? What do I need to stop doing? Where am I wasting my time? What do I need to increase doing? Hey, what am I doing that's good that I need to up it? I'm investing here, but you know what? I could invest more of my time here, and it would be wise of me to do so. It would bring more wisdom. It would bring more fulfillment to my life. And I say this all the time here, and as far as being involved, we're going to 3 Service 3 Me. I'm telling you that this place is a wise investment of your time. It's a wise investment to serve God, and even outside of these walls, to give your time away. The Bible says that you will be most fulfilled as you pour yourself out, that when you empty yourself of self, that God fills you up with only what He can fill you with. What really satisfies is when we invest our times in things that have nothing to do with us. And we give our time away, and we invest our time into eternity, into people's lives, into souls, into making a difference in this world. What do I need to increase doing? What do I need to decrease doing? Listen, there ain't nothing wrong with watching football, but maybe you watch too much. Maybe you need to decrease some of these things. Maybe it's your social media, and man, you spend a lot of time disconnecting but connecting in social media, and you're on your phone a lot. You're constantly, on your computer when you're at home, and you got a lot of things going. What do I need to decrease? And listen, I'm going to say this with as much respect as I can, because everybody parents their kids, but maybe some of you need to tell your kids no. My daughter wanted to do gymnastics and dance at the same time, and I said, no. Which one do you like the most? We talked about it. She goes, well, I like to dance, but I really like gymnastics. And I was like, yeah, and you're pretty good at gymnastics. Like you excel in that. So we had a discussion. Is this wise? No. Listen, we can't do this because we have another kid, and he's in stuff. And I go, we can't spend every night of the week taking our kids. We're going to waste time. We're going to not spend it wisely. And so for some of you, it may be decreasing your children's activities and saying, you know what, I'm going to grab control of this. And I know that's difficult to hear. And again, you go, well, if I do that, I know what some of you are thinking. If I do that, I'll actually be less productive. If I do that, my kids won't have the opportunity that they deserve. If I do that, they'll never get here. Says who? You or God? Says who? Whose standard are you living up to? Whose standard are you trying to measure your kids against? Whose standard are you measuring your career against? Well, if I scale back my career, I would be less, according to who? Moses says, God, teach me to number my days, because my days are numbered. And in light of who you are, in your calling, in your plan, in my purpose in this world, is this the wise thing to do? It's up to you. We control our calendar. But when we get a godly perspective, it demands that we change our priorities. And I'm telling you this, when you change your priorities in view of eternity, as Moses is saying here, your productivity, according to God, will go through the roof. You will live differently. You will establish a better rhythm and pace to your life. You will create breathing room so you can spend time with your family. You'll create the breathing room that you need to not be living at a pace that God never created you to live at. So you're not redlining your life to where eventually the wheels are spinning, but you're not going anywhere. And before you know it, it's not an engine of a car that's smoking, it's your life. And you go, man, my marriage is a mess, and this part of my life is not where it needs to be. And today, we all have to ask ourselves that question. If we are getting our priorities in alignment with what God would consider wise, putting the right things in our calendar, planning accordingly, what would change in our life? And so, what do you need to start? What do you need to stop? What do you need to increase investing time in, and what do you need to pull back from? Listen, go golfing, go to the movies, go to the mall. Get your time. Find the areas to refresh yourself. That's a wise investment of your time. But some areas we may need to pull back on some of those hobbies and things that we're doing. And then I'm going to ask you to do this. So once you decide that, and I would say write this out. As we go into fall, as we get back to school, as summer vacations end, and we kind of don't wait till January, okay? Don't make this a New Year's resolution. Why would you waste 5 months? Why would you waste time? Why would you not make the changes you need to make now and start investing your time wisely? I'm telling you, if this was your bank account, we're going to talk about that at a certain point. If this was, I'm losing hundreds of dollars today, and you knew you were losing money on investment, you would make the change immediately. You'd go, I'm not going to waste my, that's a terrible investment. That stock is plummeting. Pull out now, right? You would do that. But with time, for some reason, we don't do it. We keep wasting it. And we keep spending it unwisely. And you can never get it back. And you can't save it. And you can't stockpile it for later. And so in light of that, your time is limited. How should you limit how you spend your time? The band's going to come. We're going to close out. So write it down this week and then share it with someone you trust. Your spouse, a trusted friend, accountability partner. But I'm telling you, accountability is needed in this area. It's so easy to drift when it comes to our time. We can drift off course easily. We can get back. We can get a perspective. It's all happened to us before, right? You've had a countdown timer. You've been at the funeral of someone whose life was cut short. The reality that life is short hits you in the face, but for some reason, we drift away from that reality. So how can you live your life every day where you daily go, my days are numbered, so I'm going to number my days. And you need to tell someone and say, listen, I need you to help me. And when you do that, what you're essentially doing is you're putting guardrails up. So when you start to drift, someone goes, hey, I remember you told me to keep you accountable. I noticed that you've been working an awful lot. And you didn't show up at your kid's game this week. I just want to make sure. Quick text, you doing all right? You spending your time wisely? Where you hold someone, where someone holds you accountable to that. What do you need to start? What do you need to stop? What do you need to increase? What do you need to decrease? How can you make sure you don't drift off course? Jesus' brothers, James, in chapter 4, verse 14, he said this, how do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, and then it's gone. Another translation says, your life is a mist. You ever get those little spray things and you just, it's a mist. In light of eternity and who God is, James says, in light of the everlasting to everlasting, the beginning from the end, your life is it's a mist. It's just here for a second and then it's gone. He says, so what, you plan all this, what do you know? You don't know what tomorrow holds. Your life is but a vapor. It's going to be here a moment and then it's gone. And today I'm telling you, memorable moments in your life are created in margin. They're created in the margin. Relationships, which to me are the most valuable thing that we have in this world, that we can invest our time in, they're developed, they're grown in the margin, in the space. Memorable moments that your kids will talk about long after you're gone, the moments that matter most are created in the margin. When you say, God, is this wise? Here's my calendar. Rearrange my priorities. Rearrange how I spend my time. And God, make sure to help me to create breathing room so I can put my phone down. So I can turn off my work email. So I can cancel that trip. So I can invest my time where it matters most. Today, I know the reality in the world that we live in, some of you are tired, you're worn out, in your schedule, you're redlined, you've been redlined, and you're worried. I don't know if I don't make some changes, what's going to happen? I need some help. What am I going to do? And today, I want you to know that God offers help, and you need his help to get a hold of your schedule and your calendar, and I want you to just listen to the invitation that Jesus offers you today. In Matthew 11:28 through 29, it says this. Jesus said, "Come to me." He gives you an invitation. Come. All of you who are weary, who carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke, which was my teaching, upon you. And he says, let me teach you, because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Moses, thousands of years earlier, said, God, teach me. Teach us to number our days. Jesus said, if you're tired, come to me. Listen to my teaching. Let me teach you, and I will teach you how to find rest for your souls. Rest, peace, trusting in God. Would you stand with me today? And we said this last week, and it really comes down, this word trust applies to every message in this series. God, I trust you with my schedule. I trust you with my time. I trust that God, in view of eternity, that you will teach me what is wise. And today, Jesus extends that invitation to all of you. If you're tired and you're worn out, he says, come to me. There's a better way to live. And let me teach you what it is. And his word gives us instruction. His word guides us. The Holy Spirit that he invites us and welcomes us to embrace gives us wisdom, and we go, is this wise? And it brings conviction, and it brings accountability, and it keeps us from drifting off the path that God has for us. Today, rest is available, but you got to trust God. You got to believe that the one who's numbered your days is in control, and that he knows, and that as you make changes to trust him more, that he will back you up. He's got your back. He's for you. He's not against you. Lord, we love you. We thank you today for who you are, for your grace that's new every day. And God, I pray in this moment as we just surrender, not our schedules, God is really surrendering our lives to you, trusting that your way is better, and giving you every part of our life, our time, our energy, our resources. God, it's all yours. We ask you today to teach us to trust you so that we can invest our time where it matters most. Holy Spirit, come in this moment and do only what you can do. Teach us to number our days because they are numbered. In Jesus' name.